Do you ever feel stressed out by your workload? Or do you ever wonder how your colleagues, bosses, and friends seem to be able to get more done in less time? If your answer is yes, then you might be struggling with poor time management. Before you freak out, let me be clear that this is not an insult. We have all been there, myself included. I used to have a boss who would always tell me that I needed to manage my time wiser, which in that case was just her way of blaming me for having to work crazy hours instead of just acknowledging that my workload was triple that of a normal person. And while all of that was true, and it used to really tick me off when she told me that, the fact was that I did have a time management problem. I would show up to work exhausted and half asleep, spend my mornings doing mindless tasks and just waiting for the coffee to kick in, spend the next few hours in meetings, and then by the time I was done with all that around 3 p.m., I was just beginning to start my biggest project of the day that, of course, was due by end of day. If that sounds like you, you're going to want to stick around for this episode. We are doing a deep dive on time management, which is essentially the practice of organizing your time and planning it appropriately in order to divide up your hours between the activities that you have to do and you want to do. In doing it right, you will learn to work smarter and not harder and be able to accomplish more in less time, especially when things get tough and there are multiple tasks at hand. You are listening to Monday through Sunday, the podcast dedicated to helping you build the life that you are dreaming of. My name is Logan and I am your host, and today we're going to be talking about the 4 Ds of productivity. To be totally clear, I did not invent these techniques. These exist. They are tried and true tactics. However, they are tactics I've simply put into practice and want to report back and share with you guys my experience and how I have found them to be helpful in my productivity, both in business and in life. So this week, we're going to talk about the 4 Ds. We're going to go into depth, get all of the nitty gritty. And then next week, we are going to use the 4 Ds and use everything that we've learned in this episode and put it all into practice by diving into inbox zero, which is something I'm super passionate about. And I think you guys are going to love it. Welcome to Monday through Sunday. I'm Logan.
I'm Sanam.
And I'm Lane. We're best friends, the founders of Blossom Brands, and the hosts of this podcast.
We can't wait to take you behind the scenes of running a 7-figure agency with our best friends.
We're sharing our mistakes, our lessons learned, and giving you tactical advice to build the career, the business, and the relationships you dream of, and a life you don't need a weekend to escape from.
So let's get balanced and let's get down to business. Welcome to the show.
So before we dive into today's topic, I want to kick things off with a quick personal best and professional best, which last week I really got on my soapbox with these two. I feel like this was like really a long portion of the episode, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet this week. Personal best is I had a great time with my friends last Friday. We did a bring your own board night, which I had originally seen this on TikTok. My friend Carolyn hosted it and suggested the idea. And basically the concept is everybody comes over for a dinner party. Like this is a girls' night type of thing. Your girls come over and everybody brings their own board, like a charcuterie board, except the only caveat is they're not made out of charcuterie. So you can make a board out of sushi. You can make a board out of chicken nuggets. You can make a pizza board, like so many options. My friend Paulina did a dessert board. So honestly, I'm somebody who normally is a little bit resistant to these things because I'm like, oh, I have to go to the grocery store. I have to buy things. I have to prepare. But my friend Carol is all about a theme. She is the hostess with the mostest. I did personally do a traditional charcuterie because I have the perfect little tray for it that has little sections for like meats and cheeses, and it has little puns. It's really cute. My mom got it for me for my birthday one year. But anywho, we sat around, chit-chatted, had girl talk, had some rosé. These are my friends from college who I love dearly. And we just had a grand old time. Good quality girl time cannot be beat. And I feel as though if you don't have those relationships in your life, it's something that we as women naturally crave. So that's an element of what I hope to bring to you on the podcast. I want you and I to have this like one-on-one fun girl chit chat time every single week. So as always, if there's anything you want to hear about, let me know. But I feel like after last week, I kind of bared my soul in this Q&A episode. So I feel like we are on a much stronger first name basis now after that episode. I feel like you guys really got a sense of me and my heart, which like, I know we've been doing this for months now, but that one just really went deep. So if you haven't checked out that episode, definitely go back and do so. It is the one immediately preceding this one, which is episode 26, and it is a one-on-one. So go back and listen to that. So let's move on to professional best. I would say the biggest takeaway for me in my work week this week is I have really enjoyed connecting with my team this week. We have really rallied together in a new and just really impressive way over the past few days. We've really had to be scrappy, get things done, lean on each other, delegate, prioritize, which is why this episode is so timely. It's probably where the inspiration came from, but I'm just really proud of the team of women that I work with. I genuinely adore each and every one of them. I think they're so smart and talented. And especially in times like these where things are a little crazy, it just makes me feel so grateful that I have such strong women that I can lean on. And in turn, I hope to be the same source of support to them. So that's my personal and professional best. And without further ado, let's get into today's topic, which are the 4Ds of time management. The 4Ds are as follows: do, which means to prioritize and execute; delegate, which means to empower and trust; delay, which means to assess and schedule; and finally, delete, which is to simplify and declutter. So we're going to break these down one by one. I'm going to explain to you the significance, explain the practicality, how you apply it in your day-to-day. So first, starting off with do. This is to prioritize and execute. And basically the principle of do is anything you can do quickly, you should do it. So the first step here is to determine which tasks that you need to do personally. These are typically tasks that require your unique skills, expertise, or a personal touch. By focusing on these high priority, high impact type of tasks that align with your ultimate goals and responsibilities, you can really make the most of your time. And we always like to call it doer energy, which basically means just get it done, get it done, get it done as fast as possible, as effectively as possible. So how do you do this, you might ask? First, you need to be able to effectively prioritize the tasks that come across your radar. You need to identify which ones are the most important and which ones need your personal attention. In order to prioritize, you can use things like to-do lists, you can use things like email reminders, calendar apps, task management platforms like Asana or Airtable. There's so many different methods, but the important thing is to find a method that works for you and a place where you can aggregate all of this information that you're being bombarded with on a day-to-day, prioritize, and make a plan to attack. I don't know about you, but I used to be that person that I would use a legal pad for my to-do list, and I would fill out an entire legal pad every single week with all of the things that I could possibly need to do, whether it was work or personal. That legal pad was always full. I'm crossing things out. I'm adding notes in cramped handwriting. And it was just so overwhelming. I don't know if it was the yellow. I don't know if it was the old school style, but oh my gosh, my to-do list felt suffocating. It was never ending. I was always adding to, never crossing off. And the worst thing is if you are a journaler like that, you're using a legal pad or a notebook, flipping to the next page to write a new to-do list, and you have to transcribe half of the tasks from your old to-do list onto the new one because you weren't able to check them off. That is just the worst feeling. It's honestly really defeating, and it just sucks to have those lingering type of tasks. So my solution for you, if that at all sounds familiar, is the 3-minute rule, which basically means anything that comes across your radar, you are going to ask yourself a question. You're going to say, can I do this task in 3 minutes or less? If the answer is yes, go ahead, stop what you're doing, and complete it right away. If the answer is no, if it's going to require more than 3 minutes of your time to address that task, you are going to not stop what you're doing because you don't want to interrupt your flow. You are going to flag it so that you don't forget it for later, whether it's leaving it in your inbox, writing it on your to-do list, putting it on your calendar, putting it in a task manager, whatever method you choose, but you are going to flag that task and come back to it later. So to recap, 3-minute rule. You look at a new task and you decide, will this take me more or less than 3 minutes to do? If it's less, do it now. If it's more, put it on your to-do list. And then the second part of that rule is for those things that arrive on your to-do list, you have to set a time and a place in order for you to ultimately get them done. So I'll give you an example. I use the 3-minute rule every single day, but one really strong example is email. If I get an email from a potential new client and I need to send a response, or somebody asks me a question, I ask myself, will this take more or less than 3 minutes? If it's less than 3 minutes, I will do it right away. I will send it. I will archive it. I will not have to think about it again. It is such a relief to keep things like that off of my radar. It was only on my brain brain for 3 minutes max, and then I can move about my day. But for tasks that require a little bit more thought or input, maybe it's a 5-minute thing, 10-minute thing, maybe it's a question you don't know the answer to and you're going to have to look it up. This is where time blocking comes in, because it's so crucial not only to add it to your to-do list like I talked about, but make sure you have actual time allocated in your schedule to get that item done when you say you're going to get it done. So if it's something that's going to take you 1 hour, you need to schedule on your calendar in your task manager 1 interrupted hour to complete that task. Because I can tell you firsthand, a 1-hour task can very quickly become a 3-hour task if you're not focused. The key is minimizing distractions, and creating a distraction-free environment is so crucial during those larger time blocks. And I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, but a huge factor in this is turning off your notifications, utilizing do not disturb, snoozing your Slack, closing unnecessary tabs, and just letting yourself think and letting yourself really zone in on the task at hand. You would be surprised at how much context switching and how much distraction pops up when you aren't even fully aware of it. I think a lot of people fall into the fallacy of thinking that they're good multitaskers, but really you can multitask, but you can never multi-focus. So what that means is your focus is just constantly shifting. But instead, if you allow yourself the time to really have a dedicated focus towards one task at a time, I think you'll find that your overall time spent will lower, which is, of course, the goal when we're trying to be productive, have that doer energy. Okay, so that wraps up the first D, and let's move on to the second D, which is delegate. And the premise behind this is, honestly, not all tasks require your personal time or intention. And delegating is a really valuable skill that allows you to share work across your team in order to get more tasks done simultaneously than you could ever try to do back to back on your own. And delegation is something that is really hard, especially for the perfectionists out there. It involves training, it involves having the right team members in place, it involves setting proper expectations on timelines and deliverables. Like, delegation is such a learned skill and is something that I truly think only comes with practice. And I think forming personal relationships with the people you work with is so important. You have to be able to trust them. And so I would say the first step, if you're like, okay, Logan, I know that I suck at delegation, which, like, don't get me wrong, that was me to a T. How can I get better at it? So a few things. I would say first, start off with identifying tasks that are eligible to be delegated. Like, frankly, I like to think of it as, what are things that only I can do? I need to do those things and delegate the rest. So if it's something that I do the best, for lack of a better word, that's not something that only I can do. It's just something that I maybe have experience at doing more than somebody else, or I have a particular perspective. And if you're feeling like, okay, maybe somebody could do it, but could they do it as well as me? That is a sure sign that you need to invest your time in training, and you maybe need to develop some trust with the people you work with. Learning to delegate is seriously so scary because it involves letting go of control. And if you're a business owner, or if you're just a perfectionist and take a lot of pride in your work, letting go of that control can be so hard and so scary. But I promise you, if you want to grow, it is absolutely critical. So I would say identifying what task you can delegate to, who you can delegate them to, and then training them up to make sure that the work product at the end of the day is up to your standards is so, so key as a business owner, as a manager, and even as an employee. Like, I would encourage you, if you feel like you are being underutilized by your boss, maybe they don't delegate to you as much as you should, don't be afraid to offer your assistance. You can always Slack them and say, hey, I noticed that you have XYZ task on your calendar. I've actually been wanting to learn more about that. Would you be interested in me shadowing you, or would you like to let me take a first stab at it? And then you can always review and we can discuss from there. Like, I think sometimes as managers, we can fall into the trap of thinking that we need to do everything ourselves. And so when somebody reminds me that there is help available if I need it, it is just always such a breath of fresh air. So I would just encourage you to not be afraid to delegate if you're in a position to do so. And if you're looking to be delegated to, don't be afraid to offer. There is truly nothing bad that can come of that. Okay, moving on to the next D, which is delay. Ladies, brace yourself for a skincare revelation. Revive has just launched their brand new brightening serum, and it is a total game changer. In the world of skincare, vitamin C is historically a tricky ingredient. Don't get me wrong, its brightening benefits and antioxidant properties are the gold standard. But it's difficult to stabilize, which is why you'll often find it alongside ingredients like ferulic acid, packaged in a dark tinted bottle, and with a fairly high price point. Revive has changed all of that. Powered by a new type of vitamin C, THD ascorbate, Revive's brightening serum is proven to penetrate the skin 50 times more effectively than the best vitamin C serums on the market. Revive is the only brand to pair the active with their patented biorenewal peptide, which focuses on plumping, regenerating, and hydrating the skin. So not only does it brighten, but it renews as well, which is why this product is clinically proven to visibly reduce fine lines, wrinkles, dark spots, and even out your skin tone in just 4 weeks. Plus, it's proven to immediately brighten the skin for an instant glow. It's not magic, it's science. Are you ready for a better way to brighten? Of course you are. Head to ReviveSkincare.com now and be one of the first to experience this groundbreaking serum. While you're there, use code Monday20 for an exclusive 20% off your purchase, including the brightening serum. Achieve your most radiant skin yet with Revive. So, delaying a task simply means putting it off until a more appropriate time. And the first example that comes to mind for me is a really complex project that involves multiple parties. An example here at Blossom Brands is we often work with UGC creators or influencers on behalf of our brands and our clients. And oftentimes we are essentially the middleman, but ultimately we are the one responsible to making sure that the project delivers in full, right? The brand is our client. The client pays us to manage this other process. So at the end of the day, we are responsible, but we're not able to do our jobs effectively unless the brand does their job and the creator does their job, right? Like we need the brand to give us feedback on the creators that we selected. We need the brand to ship product to the creators so that they can begin filming. And then on the flip side, we need the creators to read the briefs. We need them to sign their agreements. We need them to give us their shipping addresses. We need them to send us the initial assets, incorporate feedback. And we're doing all this back and forth on a project that can oftentimes take months to complete. So during that month-long period that this project is going on, I do not keep that project at the top of my to-do list every single day. I am very aware of what the immediate next step is and who's responsible for that immediate next step, which is the premise of delay. And that just means like delay it in my brain, like not have it at the top of my to-do list when there's nothing in my control to move that project forward at the given moment. So an example is if the brand has already sent product to the creator and I'm waiting on the creator's first draft, I set deadlines with them. I communicate clear expectations of like when the content is due and what is required to be included. But while they're in the process of filming, there's truly nothing I can do but wait. And so during that time, I delay that task from my to-do list, whether that means snoozing the email in my inbox, which we'll get into next week, or crossing it off and putting in progress on my legal pad. There are multiple ways that I will delay a task in my head. And what that does is free up mental space for me to focus on other projects that I can move the needle on. So this is all about assessing urgency, importance, and immediate owners. And one thing I really like to think about with the delay approach is the Eisenhower matrix, which that name sounds really fancy. You've probably never heard the name, but I bet you remember the concept. And it's basically a chart with 4 quadrants labeled based on the urgency and importance of a certain task. So the quadrant in the top left are things that are urgent and important. The quadrant in the top right are things that are urgent but not important. The quadrant in the bottom left are things that are not urgent and important. And in the bottom right, you have things that are not urgent and not important. And the basic premise of this is that a lot of times people spend the bulk of their energy, time, and resource on items that fall in the top 2 quadrants, which are the urgent quadrants, regardless of whether or not they were truly important. I can definitely relate to this. And in fact, there's a saying that I love that is, your emergency does not constitute my emergency, which basically means just because your house is on fire doesn't mean mine have to be. Like, don't you love it when people in corporate America say, oh, I'm dealing with a fire drill. And you're like, no, you're not. Like, that's so dramatic, right? And so the idea behind this is making sure that you are really spending your time on the things that are important, regardless of if they are urgent or not, rather than only focusing on the things that are urgent, regardless of if they're important or not. So my advice in order to make sure that you are prioritizing things that are important, whether they are urgent or not urgent, is to use the delay method and keep those important tasks on your radar and continue to delay them as needed so that you can keep up with the progress while ensuring that the project is still completed at whatever time that may be. I would also encourage you to regularly review your delayed tasks and make sure that you aren't forgetting about them. There are a few different ways you can do this. You can keep a task tracker that's like an in progress column. You can use the snooze feature in Gmail. You can put things on a calendar reminder. Like, for example, when I had to take my dog to the vet, I scheduled the next appointment, I put it on my calendar, and then I never have to think again, oh, does my dog need shots? Like, it's already on my calendar. And that's another rule that I love. If it's on my calendar, it is out of my mind. So that is the delay method in a nutshell. Lastly, moving on to delete. In some cases, frankly, the most productive thing you can do is simply do nothing at all. And this is where delete comes in. This doesn't mean ignoring things that are important, but rather it means eliminating activities that don't contribute to your personal goals or overall well-being. So I know this can be really scary because there's kind of a FOMO element, right? It's like, oh, if I delete this email or if I don't attend this meeting, like, what am I going to miss out on? Am I going to fall behind? Are people going to think that I don't care? And I just want to totally free you from that mindset because it's something that I used to always think about, right? Like, if you join a Zoom meeting, you want your camera to be on if everybody else is, or you think they're going to think you're slacking off. Or maybe you can't relate to this. Maybe this is just me. But if you do relate to this, I just want to encourage you that sometimes the most empowering thing that you can do is to do nothing. And that shows that you respect your time more than anything else. And you're not going to sacrifice what's important to you for things that are important to somebody else. And with this, you really just have to learn to say no. And you can do this in a tactful way that still maintains relationships, still emphasizes how much you care about a project. And what it also does is it builds other people's respect for you when you clearly communicate tasks that you are deleting and why. So some examples that come to mind for me are like meetings that you're on that you don't contribute to. Do you really need to attend? Maybe trainings that your company hosts that are no longer relevant or helpful, or even social obligations if you're like in a work grind mode. These are all examples of things that you could simply question or say no to or delete from your priorities to make sure that you're always asking the question, what's in it for me? This is a really good way to phrase that. And it may sound a little bit selfish at first glance, but what it really means is that you're prioritizing your growth and your development. And there's honestly nothing more important than that. And I think personally, if you're not getting something out of your time could be better spent elsewhere. Deleting tasks from your radar can also really help with overwhelm and burnout. And one example that comes to mind is, let's say you are an employee and you have a manager who is assigning you task upon task that is way too much for you to feasibly accomplish. The next time you're assigned a new task, I would encourage you to ask your manager, hi, like, thank you so much for trusting me with this responsibility. I also have X, Y, and Z on my plate today. Which of these tasks would you have me not do in order to prioritize this new task? And by asking that question, you are really demonstrating to your manager that you are a good manager of your time, that you are aware of the priorities, and you want guidance and clarity on what your true focus should be on. By asking this question and putting the onus back on them instead of accepting too many things and ultimately falling short, you can really ensure that A, you're delivering to expectations, B, you're not overwhelmed, and C, you're keeping clear, defined roles and responsibilities surrounding what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. In this instance, working overtime to do something that couldn't possibly be done in a business day should be something you're not willing to do. So by using the delete method, you can really challenge that in a respectful way that helps everybody involved, right? Because your boss wants that project to get done. You want to be able to live your life after hours. So by using the delete method, you can really make sure that everybody's happy, everybody gets what you want. One final example of the delete method, which is a little bit more on a personal note, I would say is deleting Instagram. You would be surprised by how much clutter social media apps can put in your brain on a day-to-day basis, right? Like if you are just sitting on your couch scrolling on Instagram, your brain is taken to Italy, to Colorado, to somebody's cool influencer event, to a new product that you want to try at a store. Like there are so many things that you are being bombarded with when your actual physical being is just sitting on your couch at your home by yourself. And if you take all of that clutter and distraction out of your environment, you will be surprised how much more clarity of focus and intention in your day to day that you could have by decluttering your mind and removing social media from the equation. So, it's so nice sometimes when I delete Instagram just to sit there quiet in my own little world and just appreciate my own life for what it is and just be focused on my own goals. I think you can get so focused on what other people are doing, what they're seeing, and get it caught in that comparison trap that deleting an Instagram is perfect example of the delete method put into practice in your personal life. So there you have it. Those are the 4 Ds of time management and productivity, which are do, delegate, delay, and delete. Let me know if you put these into practice and how they help you, or if you have any additional tips that we didn't touch on. I would love to hear it. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and be sure to check back next week for a deep dive on owning your inbox.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Monday through Sunday. If you're building a career, a business, or any relationships, we know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us.
With that in mind, we would be so grateful if you can spare 2 minutes to rate and review this podcast. Your reviews help spread the message to more people that work doesn't have to suck.
By the way, if you're looking for your community, join us on Instagram and TikTok at Monday through Sunday Pod. We're all about connecting our like-minded listeners together. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about by sending us a DM. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you again, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.